Okay, everybody. Good evening. I am Councillor Martin Cox, the Chairman of Audit, Governance and Standards Committee, and I'm pleased to welcome you to this meeting of the committee. Before we commence proceedings, may I take this opportunity to advise you that if the fire alarm does sound, please remain seated and members of Democratic Services team will assess the situation and give further instructions on the evacuation of the building if necessary. Tonight's proceedings will be webcast by the Council, but if anyone else is intending to record these proceedings, can you please let me know now? I ask this question not to stop you, but to merely to ensure that members and any members of the public in the room know that this is taking place. I have had nobody notify me. I would also like to advise members that they should only address the meeting by way of their microphones and to remind them to turn the microphone off when they've finished speaking. Okay, let's move to the agenda then, please. So this will be the last Audit, Governance and Standards Committee meeting of the municipal year. So we move to item 1, apologies. I've received apologies, and I don't know whether Debbie has already, of Councillor Forecast. So he isn't feeling very well, so I would doubt if they've had a chance to replace. So I haven't had any others. I see 2 seats empty, Councillor Wilby and Councillor Kimmants, but nobody else having apologies. Okay, item 2, notification of substitute members. I have not been notified of any. Anybody here subbing for anybody? Lovely. Okay, item 3 then, urgent items. There's an urgent update to item 15, the Statement of Accounts for 2022-23, which I have accepted. There are updated figures to reflect the accounting treatment of grants received in advance, and this impacts upon the second recommendation in the report of that item. Also, relating to item 12, we have an urgent update of the revised Code of Conduct. You should all have seen those, certainly the urgent update for the Code of Conduct. Please have a look through that, and when we get to that item, we will be taking that. Is that agreed, everybody? I can hear you. Thank you. Right. Item 4. I see Councillor John Perry here as a visiting member. Welcome, John. I'm quite happy for you to stay seating in the attending area. I think it's much more beneficial than getting up and walking forward. So welcome. I don't see any other members here. You'll be sitting there for all items, we take it, John?
Yes, and thank you very much, Martin, for allowing me to sit here. Yes, I am interested in all the items, yes. Thank you.
Okay, lovely. Item 5 then, disclosures by members and officers. Are there any disclosures by members and officers this evening? Don't see anybody indicating. Item 6 then, disclosures of lobbying. Anybody been lobbied? Excellent. Nobody indicating. Item 7 then, to consider whether any item should be taken in private because of the possible disclosure of exempt information. We do have part 2 papers on the agenda, so that when we come to it, we will be moving into part 2. So I move that items on part 2 of the agenda be taken in private as proposed because of the likely disclosure of exempt information for the reasons specified, having applied the public interest test. Is that agreed to happen later? Thank you. Item 8 then, the minutes. Part 1 minutes of the meeting held on 15th of January 24. It's on your agenda page 1. Are there any comments on accuracy of the minutes? Don't see anybody indicating. I move then that the minutes, part 1 of them, of the meeting held on the 15th of January be approved as a correct order and signed. Is that agreed? Thank you. Item 9 then, there are no questions from members of the public. Item 10, We have not received any questions from members to me as the chairman this evening. So item 11, we have the complaints received under the Members' Code of Conduct. It's on your agenda from page 8. The report will be introduced by the Monitoring Officer, Russell Fitzpatrick. Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Evening, members. Oversight of the Code of Conduct complaints falls within the remit of this committee. In order to assist with this function, the Monitoring Officer provides reports on complaints to this committee. A summary of the complaints received and disposed of from the 1st of March 2023 to 28 February 2024 is appended, and the recommendation is that the report be noted.
Thank you very much, Russell. Nice and concise. Okay, does anybody wish to ask any questions at this point? Councillor Cooling.
Thank you very much. Is there any GDPR reason why the parish cannot be identified? Not the parish councillor, but the parish council, in case we see a systematic issue with a parish council. Thank you.
I suspect that Russell will tell you that if you did that, you might be able to work out who all everything else and join the dots up. But
for us, it's a 7-to-1, and I think we're probably one of the smallest parish councils, so betting odds wouldn't be too great.
I appreciate what's being said. I don't think there necessarily is, but I do think there is a point. One of the issues which we had is we are trying to, I think it was a couple of years ago, so it's been asked for us to give more information about the complaints. Obviously, we're aware that the legislation was amended to remove disclosures. So I think the chairman is correct that if we put too much information in, I think it might be easier to go on a bit of a witch hunt and find out what's going on. The committee could take a view that they would like to have the parish councils identified, but at the same time, we might then have to consider, we'd have to look more closely at the detail of the complaint. So it depends on what's more important to the committee, whether they want to know the detail of the complaint and what is being alleged across the authorities, parish councils and the borough council, or not.
Well, if I may, and perhaps it's something that this committee would like to put back to Maidstone Calc to come back with a view on whether we wish parish councils to be identified, because some parish councils do seem to have systematic issues with I believe, a number of complaints emerging. Surely we should be aware of that so that some training, advice, whatever you want to call it, can be given to the relevant parish council. So if there's no GDPR block, I would ask that this committee resolves, somebody suggests and resolves, that the question is asked of Maidstone Calc to ask all of its parish council members, would it like parish councils to be identified when one of its parish councillors, remaining anonymous, is the subject of a complaint? Thank you.
Russell, do you think that's legally okay, or are we just opening up problems?
I think we get into the realms of, and I understand this was before my time when the more information was requested, so I've tried to give more and more information, but without giving away as to who it was. I think it's one of those, it's a slight slippery slope, but we can try, is the way I put it.
Okay, I think it may be worth going back to them and letting them comment, because it is about them, it is about members. I have indication from Councillor Perry and Councillor Harper in that order, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I speak a little bit as a parish councillor myself, I'm a two-hatter, so it does. When I saw this, I was quite surprised, well, not totally surprised, but all the complaints seem to be on the parish council. And so there was an issue with some parish councils, I think, in the way they run, and then I saw some of the comments about bullying and this sort of thing. They are quite worrying. So I think I would like to see some general requests to Calc I mean, I understand the point made by Peter about getting more detail, but a general request to Cal to look into this whole matter, because it seems to me that some parish councils seem to have forgotten how to act and certainly don't respect the Nolan principles that we all sign up to. So I am a bit concerned about that, and I speak as a parish councillor myself as well as being a borough councillor. Thank you.
Comments well made, John. Paul.
I'm afraid I don't agree with the idea of putting in more information in this type of report. I think what we don't want to do is to get a situation where, you know, we end up with witch hunting. It's very easy in the days of social media for people to, you know, get on a hobby horse, only hear half an argument, and then some poor innocent individual gets pilloried. And given in each of these complaints, the final decision has been that the complaints has failed, I think the idea of trying to identify people who are innocent when someone's made accusations against them which weren't proven is not really in the interests of you know, anybody. It doesn't actually achieve anything. And we all know of instances where accusations are made wrongly against individuals, and it becomes very difficult for the person then accused to prove himself innocent, even though they've gone through these processes. One bad piece of social media can damn someone's reputation. And I think the idea of identifying these people would just not serve any purpose. If any person through this process was identified, well, the complaint was upheld, then I'm sure the monitoring officer and the relevant officers would discuss it with that individual, and relevant action, whatever, would be taken. But I don't think it's one which needs to go into the public arena, because I just don't see the relevance of it. I think we're discussing, you know, individuals, and I think this report gives you enough information. Whether there's a question about training, that's a completely different thing. Now, obviously, our officers for Maidstone Borough Councillors have set out a training programme, or in the process of setting out a training programme to take place following the declaration of all the results on the 3rd of May. It may be relevant for the parish councils to ensure that all parish councillors go through a similar training process. That's completely separate to, you know, disclosing information I don't think would be in the public interest.
Thank you, Paul. If I was going to comment, it would have been exactly that. I don't know who's eligible to provide that training, whether it's individual parish councils, but I'm sure that's something that after the document that how we see ourselves going forward with new councillors that will come, I think that is a very good, effective initial training programme, and it is set out. And I think the code of conduct is something that people should look at. I don't think it would be individual people, but also this document is historical. It's not looking the week it happened, 2 weeks after. This is almost a quarter or even a year in some cases. So it's not as important, I think, as you point out. Mr. Fitzpatrick would like to just come back before I then go to Councillor Trubinski and then Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I can also point out that if you look in the last column with regards to the final decision, all of these complaints haven't gone past the local test. They either haven't gone past the legal test, or they haven't gone past the local assessment test. So they've failed on every... So again, I'm not entirely sure what it would achieve by naming and shaming parish councils. Also, with all of these, they also go past an independent person before the decision notice is issued. Yeah.
Okay, we are very privileged to have Mrs. Broom here this evening, who just wants to make some comment about calc and this specific matter. Thank you.
So I just wanted to draw a distinction between what might appear in a report and what conversations may occur with calc. So notwithstanding what Mr. Fitzpatrick has just said about complaints needing to satisfy particular criteria before they're progressed, if we begin to see clusters or patterns, then there have been occasions in the past when I have informally spoken to the chair of CALC, and we have certainly had a number of conversations about the support that can be provided, for example, to the chair of a parish council or to a parish council more widely. So while that might not be identical to what you're asking for, Councillor Cooling, I hope it gives some reassurance that there isn't a complete absence of communication.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Trubinski, Councillor Jones, and back to Councillor... Oh, I'll stop that. Councillor Natchball, then Councillor Cooling.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think one of the problems is with the nature of parish councils, it's not easy to get people to sit on parish councils. So a lot of people become co-opted and other things go. And I think I support Councillor Harper in his comments about training, and somehow there needs to be a formal necessity for someone to go through particular training so they know what's expected of them as far as their behaviour, if you like, is concerned on those counts. And I think that really is a vital thing to look at going forward. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just want to support what Councillor Harper has said, and I think that this report here, you're quite right, none of these have been found guilty. So, and we all know that there's vexatious and malicious complaints made against perfectly innocent people. So, you know, I don't think that it should be in the public domain that if it's passed the legal test and it's passed the other tests and it hasn't progressed, why on earth should it be anybody's business other than the complainant and the person that they're complaining about? If you're innocent, it is nobody's business, I don't think. If somebody's found guilty or and there's sanctions imposed, then of course that there's times when training should take place. But at this stage, that they have all been unproven, and as I say, there's vexatious and malicious complaints made all the time, and they just have to be discounted. You know, you look through the process. If they're vexatious, they're discounted.
Thank you very much. I think it's very much, it should be training for all, and maybe if it hasn't been done before, as the new councillors are coming on to parish councils and indeed this council, that's when to set the line straight, I feel. Councillor Natchball, and then Councillor Cooling.
Thank you. My experience of parish council was that where there's nobody in attendance, such as a monitoring officer, to stop something happening in its tracks, a more experienced councillor can sometimes ride roughshod over a new councillor and really put them off the job. And whilst we talk about the Nolan principles, quite honestly, some councillors, parish councillors, think it's a pop group. They really have no idea about adhering to the principles of public life. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cooling.
That may just have stolen some of my thunder. I did not ask for the name of the parish councillor. I did not ask for the name of the complainant, because I am fairly familiar with GDPR and our 35-page document for TSON on that. But as long as I've been a member of this committee, the vast majority of complaints have had parish council against them. I don't view that as reputationally enhancing. And therefore, if you want to avoid social media, don't go on it. I'm sorry, but some parish councils are 10 or 11 strong. Darn it, that's quarter the size of the future borough council. So I think guessing who the parish councillor is, great. It may be a village shop or a village hall guessing game, who's the guilty party. But I think it would be good if it got exposed that this particular parish has an issue, whether it's parish councillors' behaviour towards each other, maybe, I'm making this up as I sit here, the clerk's behaviour back and forward, or the members' behaviour to the clerk, or some vexatious, malicious residents. What's the problem with a bit of openness without infringing GDPR? Thank you for your comment. And with that, I've been a parish councillor for a lot of years, as I'm sure John has and so on. We're far from perfect, and we should not be afraid for it to be exposed where we have got a local issue emanating from whatever source. Thank you. And I am aware of the conversations, informal, with the chair of Maison Calc, and thank you for that, and the vice chair of Maison Calc. I'm very aware of that, and that is good. That's informal. So I'm looking for something more formal to go alongside this, which is a damning indictment, even though they're all not proven, not proven, not proven, or didn't meet the criteria. It's still got parish council against it, or parish against it. It's not good enough for parish councils.
Thank you, Peter. For a final comment then, please, from Paul Harper.
I very rarely disagree with Peter, but I do on this one. I think the Chief Executive, Alison Broom, highlighted that if there was a incident of repetition of cases in any parish council which were found to be guilty, so parish council A, guilty on this, guilty on that, guilty on that, the Chief Executive of Maidstone Council and our monitoring officer would communicate to that relevant parish council if they were unaware that what was going on in their own authority as to the situation. And I think that, to me, I've got every faith in our Chief Executive and our monitoring officer that they would undertake that, and I think that's sufficient. I really think, we're about looking at the new processes we're about to do, covers all we need. Sorry.
Thank you very much. And because he hasn't spoken yet this evening, Councillor Titchener, for the real final word, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, it sounds as if I'm sitting on the fence. I agree with Councillor Harper and Councillor Cooling. I think there is a danger, as Councillor Harper says, of innocent people being falsely accused. It's like these, you read in the papers about a young man being accused of rape who's then cleared and they got it all wrong and his reputation is ruined. On the other hand, I think if we could we not publish the councils, the parish councils concerned on yellow pages and keep it confidential so that this committee just knows which parish councils are involved without making it public?
Okay, this report is for noting unless, after our discussion, we feel that there is enough to make a recommendation, but I don't really know where we would direct it unless it was at Calc to discuss. So maybe, without a recommendation coming from this committee, if you're the Vice Chairman and you were wanting to take this forward, then because of what you've read and how it's been presented, then you come back if that's what you want to do, because I don't really see there's enough consensus one way or the other. Peter.
Thank you for that, Chair. I will certainly brief Geraldine Brown, the Chair, but I'd be equally happy if Alison were to have a conversation with Geraldine within the context of what's happened here. I will make sure that Geraldine is aware that it's coming, but I think for the council boss and Maidstone Calc boss to have a conversation would be a good idea.
I think that's a fair representation if that's possible. So therefore, this item is for noting. Are we all noting it? Noted? Thank you very much. So, on to item 12 then. It's actually talking about the Member Code of Conduct arrangements for dealing with councillor conduct complaints. You'll find this starting on page 14, but also we have the additional paper that's been brought in at the beginning of the meeting. Are we okay to carry on and glance over this? Well, you have done so already, so I will, therefore, the report will be introduced by the Monitoring Officer, Russell Fitzpatrick, please.
Thank you, Chairman. This matter was before this committee on the 15th of January. That report is set out at Appendix 1, pages 21 to 111. Appendix 4 to that document at pages 137 to 153, comprising the amended arrangements or procedure for dealing with the Code of Conduct complaints, to that report is for noting. The matter was deferred to give CALC the opportunity to be consulted on the proposed amendments to the Code of Conduct. That is per the committee minute of, at Appendix 2, page 114. CALC's valuable response was received on the 6th of March, and that is set out at Appendix 3, pages 119 to 136. The Monitoring Officer considered the consultation responses, and to the extent that he believes the proposed amendments are agreeable or necessitated further amendments as a result, are included at Appendix 4, that's pages 137 to 153. This Appendix 4 comprises the amended Code of Conduct, which is for noting, and that's, as I say, it's at page 137 to 153. In considering the proposed amendments, it needs to be borne in mind that the purpose of this Code of Conduct is to regulate behaviours of Maidstone Borough Councillors and co-opted members, not parish councillors or parish council co-opted members. A parish council is free to adopt its own Code of Conduct per section 27 of the Localism Act. In doing so, it may, per section 27, adopt the code adopted by the council, as in Maidstone Borough Council, as the principal authority. The monitoring officer simply applies whatever code is adopted by the parish council. The hope, to ensure consistency in application and to assist twin and triple hatters, is that parish councils adopt the Maidstone Code of Conduct. With that in mind, and given the comments by CALC, stylistic amends aimed at enhancing clarity or addressing specific concerns have been accepted. Amendments tailored to parish councils which do not directly pertain to the regulation of Maidstone Borough Council members or co-opted members have not been universally accepted. These remain open for consideration and adoption by the respective parish council. Amends which do not align with the existing legal framework have not been accepted. For example, at Annex 2, page 150 to 152, reflects verbatim the wording of the relevant authority's disclosable pecuniary interest regulations 2012. There is an urgent update. In effect, it's basically reinserting the definition of a co-opted member. It was a little confusing because I think the way it was originally inserted. That's now been clarified. That's actually defined in the Act, in section 27.4 of the Localism Act. At paragraph 2.1 and 2.2, and that's at pages 98 and 99 of the agenda, this relates to the hearing panel rules of procedure, the deleted words, +1 voting parish councillor when a parish councillor is the subject of a complaint, is being reinstated. I've also attached the complaint form, which is referred to at page 88, and this is for noting. The purpose of that is simply to add more clarification to try and avoid complainants failing the legal and the local assessment tests. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Russell. Just one point, when you were reading out the urgent update, you said +1 voting parish councillor, and yet on here it's 1 non-voting.
Apologies, +1 non-voting. Thank you.
The floor, Councillor Cooling. Anybody else?
One question first for Russell. In the papers that were handed out, there was also one headed recommendation, and in the papers for this meeting, there's options 1 through 5. What is this recommendation relating to? That's my first question, please.
Sorry, it's relating to option 1. In effect, all I'm setting out in the document that I circulated, which says recommendation, is that which is attached to the papers, except that I'm trying to, because of the way it appears, comes across as being quite complex, the way the recommendation is set out, so I tried to give some page numbers to assist members. That's all that adds, and then I've just added together with the urgent update, which were the amendments. So it's relating to option 1.
Thank you for that clarification. Right, on page 18 of the pack, paragraph 2.5, that is where it is stated that parish councils can add in bits here and add in bits there if it's not in the Maidstone Borough Council overarching code of conduct. But surely, for the last year, or is it 2 years, we've been trying to get to a position for a code of conduct that hopefully all parish councils would adopt without change, so that the monitoring officer, if that's you or whoever it is in the future, hasn't got to look up the particular. So this suggestion that don't worry about it, Teesside Parish Council can add a bit in here, somebody else can add in a bit there, it's against the objective that we've been striving towards. And for the last year, maybe 2 years, Peter and I, as parish reps, have been pushing this subject hard. The Kent Secretaries Forum, or whatever it's called, I'm going to fairly rude, it took its time. And when we pleaded to see drafts before they were agreed by Kent, we were told that yes, we would, and then we weren't. And now we're faced with something, and yes, complex I think is a kind word to apply to the papers. We're faced with, and by the way, there's the update on the complaints, this, that and the other. There is a very impolite expression which I can't use, but we're being given a slight rush to agree all of this so that it could go forward to the relevant NBC committee. It's my failing, and yes, I'm the point man, or point person, I should say, on this for Maidstone Calc. I have not had time to analyse what you have done, and by the way, it would have actually helped to have a Word document, because if I take the PDF that's here and convert it to Word, that conversion isn't always accurate. So I cannot see what has been included, hasn't been excluded, has been excluded, etc., etc. It's far too early. I'll make a plea to this committee. We've been on this a year or two. We want to get this right. We want to simplify for the parishes and therefore for NBC by having something which can be, I would hope, adopted by all parish councils without change. And with clever crafting, I believe that is achievable. So I make a plea to you all to say thank you for the work done in this complex pack, but there's not enough here to do other than option 5, which is to stick as we are at the moment and come back to this, I'm going to say in the fullness of time, but as far as Maidstone Calc is concerned, it's likely to be by the time of this next meeting. So please, option 5, please do not adopt this. I do not think it stands the test of rigour and thoroughness. And I'm being rude to somebody or other, I'm sure. Thank you.
Councillor Cooling, I can see what you're driving at. to me, 2.5, if I reworded that, I would say that this document should be what nuances of each parish may be able to change almost cosmetically, not legally or how it's set out. But if you were to say, I don't know, we've got 15 members in it, and then you would say we only have 17 members, or we have 8, or whatever. So this document should be able to be crafted to cover what that parish council might need, but the document itself is the skeleton to be able to use. Is that not possible?
I may be sitting here to be corrected, but I don't think the Code of Conduct gets into the specifics of a parish council in terms of its structure, 7, 8, 9, whatever members. So no, I'm sorry, I have to disagree, because what we were trying to avoid is actually every parish council having to take time to put in the nuances. And I suspect it's very achievable through more drafting. And by the way, I may be proven to be wrong, but the existing code of conduct, which was based on the Maidstone model, was adopted by all parish councils. Now, I may be lying, I don't think I am, and so I'm trying to help our borough get to the same position as it is now, i.e. a model that all parishes can adopt. And this is just adding complexity to the situation. And what is a month or two in terms of the timescale for this, given that it's taken a year to 2 years already?
Just from a point of view about what we've mentioned already about training, we will be having new councillors that we would rather show this code of conduct to, who are being seated as of the 18th of May at the AGM and will have taken over after being elected after the 3rd of May. If we leave this, I mean, I haven't discussed this, but if we leave this, we might get into June or July before we come back with a date to do this. You've mentioned the previous code of conduct. You can see the track changes are there. They have been agreed generally by the Kent group. And I think we're almost trying to delay what is in front of us that is worthy. Our officer is saying it seems it is workable, and that's what we've got to try and achieve, I think, as this committee. Because I dare say not every parish council will just go, that's fine, it works for us. They will adapt it slightly, maybe. But I did have Councillor Titchener indicate, so I'll come back to you, Councillor Cooling.
Thank you, Chairman. No, I agree entirely with Councillor Cooling. I think it's a big mistake to allow parishes to start amending a document that should be universal across the borough amongst all parishes. I think you need to understand that there are many parish councils where 50% perhaps, I'm just guessing, but a large number of parish councillors do not necessarily know a lot of the detail, and they could add or delete certain things in the code of conduct which would be detrimental not only to them but also to the borough. I think it's important that the borough lays down a code of conduct that all the parishes can adhere to. And I think it's a big mistake for the monitoring officer to have to look through possibly 41 different codes of conduct.
Is that the case? Would it be the responsibility of the borough to look at every single parish's code of conduct before they could instigate it or put it in place?
No, it's for the parish council to adopt its own code of conduct. And if it the Act turns around and says specifically, it's peremptory. It's saying you may comply. It says the relevant authority, that is a parish council, may comply with having a code of conduct by adopting the principal authorities, as in Maidstone's one, and it may assume that we have complied with certain other provisions, which are the Nolan principles and pecuniary interests. Now, it is for the parish council to look at that. I mean, for example, If we look at something like a co-opted member is only a co-opted member if they have voting rights. If they don't have voting rights, they're not a co-opted member. Yeah? And they wouldn't therefore have to comply with the council's code of conduct. But oddly enough, a Maidstone member who's co-opted to a parish council has got a code of conduct that he has to comply with because he will have voting rights. So, but we can't take out, for example, the definition of co-opted member. We tried to look at ways of saying, well, maybe a parish council can look at the rewording of this. Councillor Cooling, throughout his comments, as you can see at Appendix 3, has gone through and he's made amends. Now, as a member, as the Vice Chairman of Calc can then go out to the parish councils and say, you can look at these bits and amend these bits. He's already done the exercise. It's not for us to tell them, and I don't mean that disrespectfully, it's not for us to tell the parish council what code of conduct to adopt. We've done the legwork. You've done the legwork to agree as well. Bearing in mind this is a Maidstone code of conduct, not a parish council one. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure why. I'm not entirely sure we're going to be any further forward when we come back if the matter is deferred.
Thank you. I have got Councillor Harper and Trubinsky waiting to speak, please.
I think the monitoring officer, in a sense, summed it up. We're looking at a code of conduct for Maidstone Borough Council and Maidstone Borough Councillors. We'll be approving the updated constitution. Well, I say we. Whoever is elected on the 2nd of May, and we'll know on the 3rd of May, they will be sitting on the 18th of May at the council's annual general meeting. And I think one of the items on the agenda would be adopt the constitution. And it makes sense to adopt a constitution which includes the updated code of conduct that those councillors elected, those 49 people, will need to adhere to for perhaps the following 4 years if it's not, amended subsequently. So I think it's quite important, and I think us, and especially those of us on the committee who are borough councillors now, to be in a situation to make a decision tonight to recommend on, so that when the constitution is then presented to the council's annual meeting, it's had the benefit of councillors who've sat on this committee for a period of time and understand how the council works. Looking at all my colleagues here, we've all been on here for different periods of time, rather than deferring it, because if we defer it now, I would imagine a new council is not going to consider an updated code of conduct a particularly high priority. And it may be that it sits to one side, covering dust, for the next 4 years, because they're going to feel they've got more important things to get on with. So I think if we don't approve this tonight, we could probably assume that this is going to be pushed to the long grass and might not see the light of day in this format ever.
Mr. Fitzpatrick, you'd like to just come back to comment, please?
Yeah, I just need to clarify some of the timescales here, because here we're noting the report. From here it goes to Democracy and General Purposes, who hold the Constitution, and from there it goes to full council. Now, there isn't a Democracy and General Purposes meeting between now and I think the next one is actually on the 19th of June. Yeah, so there is that, but obviously what you will be doing is that you'll be delaying it to the next meeting of this committee, will then be delayed to the meeting of the next committee, to then end up at the next. So, but I'm not entirely sure that it's going to move any further forward than what we've got in front of us.
Councillor Titchener, if you want to come back, and then I'll go to Councillor Drabinski. Hang on. No, you put your hand up. Was it me?
Yeah, it was Peter, yes.
Okay, I'll go to Councillor Drabinski then, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Speaking as someone who's got 4 parishes currently in the ward, with another one, if I'm re-elected, coming on, all four of them are very different beasts, so to speak. And the thing that strikes me is actually looking at this, that the majority of the parishes would just accept it, and that would be it, and they wouldn't bother making changes. A lot of them because they haven't got expertise or anything else. However, what would concern me is the ones who did decide to change it might be changing it for a specific reason. And that's the thing, that we're opening up something that we don't need to open up. That's what the point I'd like to make. But most parishes would accept this straight away, but the people who do want to change it may have reasons to do so. Thank you.
Councillor Cooling, but I will just say to members, we have a recommendation before us. Please, would you look at the recommendation that's amended with the right red lines as we listen as well? Thank you.
Well, firstly, my apologies for the amount of time this is taking. If it's that important, I just wonder why the progress has been so slow, invisible over, it's almost 2 years, it must be. And the current code of conduct, and I'm not defending it, I'm saying let's replace it in due course, it must have seen the borough through at least 2 partial elections, if not 3. So what's really wrong with it? And if you're rushing, and I'm sorry, this is an untidy document, that's my fault. Nobody else's, well maybe it's somebody else's. It's an untidy document. And if you're going to rush, then the point is that if there's a complaint against a parish council, who gets fully involved? Quite rightly, the monitoring officer. And the monitoring officer needs to then abide by the code of conduct of that parish council. So surely it helps everyone if we get an updated code of conduct successfully adopted by, I'm going to say, all parish councils, as I believe we have at the moment. So I can hardly understand some of the dialogue that I've heard this evening, because it's clearly been a very relaxed exercise, and suddenly with an election coming up, and by the way, we've just heard that this new model code couldn't be put in place before the election anyway, because the relevant committee, unless it has an emergency meeting, isn't until June. What's the rush? Don't you want to do a proper job? And at the moment, I would lay a bet this is far from a proper job. That's my fault as much as anyone else's. So I plead with you, it's not deferring it, option 5. And then this, you can bet that Maidstone Calc will be pressing to have this updated. So by the next 4-year full election, there will be well and truly a modified code of conduct in place. Please don't rush. Thank you.
If I may just have a moment, then please. Right, can I just say that I think we've heard that we are dealing with Maidstone Borough Council's Code of Conduct, and what has been prepared here is workable, and then it will go out to the parishes if we vote it through tonight. I don't know what will happen about democracy and general purposes.
No, it won't go out tonight. It's got to go. It's got to go through. It's full council who says yeah or no.
But will that be included at the AGM as the next full council? So it'll have to go to the following full council in July. Right, okay. What we have before us is the Code of Conduct for Maidstone Borough Council. I would like to ask you to look at the recommendation, the newly submitted one, with the red additions to that, and we will go through each item and vote on each one of those individually. Okay? So, I will read each one out, and then I will I will obviously put it forward. I will just ask for a seconder and then a show of hands, please. So 1, proposed update to the Member Code of Conduct at Appendix 4 to this report, pages 137 through 153, be noted. Seconded Councillor Harper. All in favour? Can I have those members, please, with hands up, please? Those against? I have casting vote 4. 2, the proposed update to the arrangements for dealing with councillor conduct complaints at Appendix 4 to the 15th of January 2024 Officer Report, pages 72 to 111 of this report, be noted together with the urgent update. So this is for noting. Is it noted? Thank you. 3, the Democracy and General Purposes Committee recommended to Council that the Constitution be updated to include the Member Code of Conduct at Appendix 4 to this report, pages 137 to 153, and the arrangements for dealing with councillor conduct complaints at Appendix 4 on the 15th of January 2024 Officer Report, pages 72 to 111 of this report, together with the urgent update. I'm happy to propose that to move forward, seconded by Councillor Harper. All those in favour? 3 in favour. Against? 3 against. I have a casting vote. 4. Item 4, the Council be recommended to adopt the Member Code of Conduct at Appendix 4 to this report on pages 137 to 153, and the arrangements for dealing with the councillor conduct complaints at Appendix 4 to the 15th of January 2024 Officer Report at pages 72 to 111 of this report, together with the urgent update, be recommended. I'm happy to recommend. Councillor Harper. Are those in favour? Those against? Casting vote in favour. I will also read out the 5th one. The monitoring officer, in consultation with the chair of the committee, be authorised to effect editorial amendments prior to the report being submitted to the Democracy and General Purposes Committee. This is a recommendation. Anybody willing? You agree to do that? So those in favour of agreeing to do that? Against? Casting vote. Councillor Cooling.
May I please have it minuted that this agenda item, which has impact and import for parish councils, could it be noted that the 2 parish representatives did not have a vote. Thank you.
I think that is a given with this committee, though, Councillor Cooling.
I don't think that's, excuse me, Chair, I'm being difficult. I don't think that's fair. For the importance of this, I would have thought it should be highlighted in the minutes that we were not able to vote against and that all 3, or whatever it was, were passed on the chairman's casting vote. I do think we should be given some publicity for having no vote on this important subject for parish councils.
Okay, we will put that in the minutes. Thank you. Okay, item 13 then, the Housing Benefits Subsidy Claim 2021-22. This report is for noting and you can find it from page 154 in your papers. The report will be introduced by Zoe Kent, Interim Head of Mid-Kent Revenue and Benefits Partnership. Over to Zoe, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The Housing Benefits Subsidy Claim for 2021-22 was completed by Maidstone Borough Council officers in April 2022. The work to check the subsidy claim was carried out by our officers during 22-23. This is a long task, completing many workbooks. A number of errors were found, however, as we deal with more than 50,000 pieces of work, it is known that there is a likelihood that some errors will be found, such as transposing figures. There were no errors found where claims were being assessed incorrectly, which would mean further training for all staff. We were told by Grant Thornton that the claim would be signed off in the summer of 2023. However, the final claim wasn't received until last month. This makes it difficult for us to understand if there are processes that need to be reviewed. We are still waiting for the 2022-23 claim to be reviewed. This report is for noting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zoe, for that. Anybody have any comments? Councillor Harper?
Just a question. I just wonder, in terms of filling in this form, and given, I think the officer was saying, and if you're looking at something like paragraph 2.6, 2.7, the total value of underpayments was £22. I just wonder how much it's sort of costing staff time in resourcing to actually prepare to identify that 50,000 assessments, the total value of underpayments was £22.
I would have to come back to you with a figure of the officer time, but it takes hours and hours of officer time. But this is down to the Department for Work and Pensions. I've sat in many meetings when this has been discussed. We are audited down to the penny, which is sometimes you'll see in these reports that the errors will add up to £1 or something across millions of pounds. But that is the way that we audit it. We are audited, and so we have the expenditure. We do get an administration grant from the DWP that would be partly covering that.
Okay, so thank you very much for this report, and I'm sure you're very proud of 99.99% accuracy. We can't knock that at all. Thank you very much to your department for the work they've done here. This report is for noting. Are we happy to note? Agreed? Thank you. Item 14 then, the Internal Audit and Assurance Plan 24-25. This is found from page 175. There is a decision to be made. The report will be introduced by Catherine Woodward, Head of Mid-Kent Audit Partnership. Catherine.
Thank you, Chair. So the Internal Audit and Assurance Plan, there are 3 recommendations. The first is to approve the plan. The second is to note the resources required. And the third is to note that the plan is compiled independently without undue influence from the management of the authority. So the purpose of the Internal Audit and Assurance Plan is to provide adequate coverage of audits to deliver the annual audit opinion at the end of each year. Public sector internal audit standards that we abide by state that the audit planning is built upon risk assessments, so both internal and external risks are considered. Page 181 of your report details the external risks that influence the audit plan and are drawn from sources such as SITFA and the Internal Institute of Internal Auditors, IIA. So page 182 details the internal risk factors that we consider as part of the operational risks, and this includes some obvious risks such as the financial risks to the authority and some more obscure risks such as change and complexity of systems that we look at. When we compile the audit plan, we assess these risks along with assessing other factors such as corporate priority, previous results, the time since the last review, and also through organisational knowledge. and discussions with the relevant officers, and they all feed in to produce this audit plan. Page 183 of the report details the resources that are required to deliver the optimal amount of audit days to deliver this plan, which allows me to give an internal annual audit opinion in spring of each year. So just on some of those resources, we have, as you'll be aware, had some resourcing difficulties in the past. We have had some partial successful recruitment campaigns, and we are going out again to recruit. But as I've previously mentioned, we do still have the opportunity to use contractors where necessary to bridge that gap. Page 184 details how we deliver each of the audits and the audit plan and the themes that each audit is categorised under. And page 185 details the audits that are on that plan. So you'll see there are audits covering financial systems, organisational governance, the council's infrastructure, operational audits, and audits covering our human capital. So you'll see this covers a really broad range which is required to deliver a balanced audit opinion at the end of the year. And I'm happy to take any questions from members should they have any.
Thank you very much for that, Catherine. I open the floor. Councillor Harper indicated.
Just a very simple question. In terms of page 185 on governance audit, I see we've got elections management to be done, and I think it's probably, the last time it was done was 2016-17. It's probably about time to do it again. I just wondered whether it might be worth sort of timing that, say, towards the end of the financial year, because by that point we may have had a general election. That might be more opportune to take that into account as well.
So just a bit of an update on the elections management audit. That should have been an audit that we delivered this financial year. However, due to some legislation changes that came into the Electoral Commission introduced and some constraints within the electoral registration team, we felt that it was more appropriate to move it into next year. And I have had discussions with the elections manager, who has actually proposed to do it between the May elections and before the general, so that we can provide that assurance to make sure that all of the new pieces of legislation that have come into force are considered before we get to that general election.
If I could, no, that sounds perfectly sensible. And then I suggest perhaps, given the volatility of when a general election might be done, it might be worth starting to work on about the 4th of May.
You keep stealing my jokes, Paul. I was going to make something about that, but don't worry, absolutely. Councillor Cooling.
Thank you. Just by the way, internal audit is fundamental, and from where I sit, is performed excellently and gives residents, parishes, a lot of confidence in the operation, very professional operation of this borough. Page 185. Could I just check, please? This is for clarification. It's headed Audit Plan 24-25. Are you going to be doing, excuse my ignorance, are you going to be doing all of those?
Yes, that's the plan. So I think it's possibly really important to note that there are a number of these audits that are shared services audits, so they're across the 3 partners as well. And so obviously some of those audits will appear on Swales' audit plan and Tunbridge Wells' audit plan as well. So there are some that are just specific to Maidstone, but yes, the intention is to deliver as many of those as possible.
There we go. Hope you can hear me. Thank you. It may be helpful at our next meeting if we have, because if you get through all of these, even on a shared basis, I think we'd be highly impressed if you could remind us of what the priority is across these, because I see down here there are 2015-16, at least 2 of them, and one of them, ICT network controls and security. Given the stress on IT and the network, especially given working from home, I would have thought that needs to be looked at very urgently. And leisure services contract, given the amount of money that goes through that, I would have thought that would be high priority, but I think we'd be interested in seeing your priorities, please. Thank you.
Yeah, that's something we can consider in our progress reports to include those priority ratings on there. And thank you for your very kind comments as well about the service.
Yeah, I too was going to say, are there any in particular order? I mean, are you going to pick out the ones that previous were weak or not even there? Do you do the none first and then the weeks and then how they may play out, or what is the feeling?
So generally speaking, yes, our focus would always be on previous week audits and those that have been furthest since time lapsed. However, we do also have to consider the timings within the service. I think if I was to go in and do any audits in accountancy during May, I may be strung up for that because obviously the work they're doing, and similar with elections, we have to make sure we time these audits. So often that's some of the reasons in terms of priorities where they may slip for that reason, because we obviously have to consider those. All of these have been discussed with all of the heads of service, so they do know they're coming, and we do try to incorporate them. All of these audits on this plan are what we intend to deliver for an optimal level of provision to give that annual audit opinion. And I see it that they're all really important. And that's my view, because this gives us the balanced perspective across the authority to provide that annual audit opinion. And that's not to say that we will deliver them all. That's the intention. And our resourcing is key to that. But I can certainly provide some more priority information in our progress reports.
Thank you very much. I certainly would head up the health and safety one as being near the top. I'm surprised it is rated as it is, but anyway. So we have some recommendations. And nobody else. I don't want to cut anybody off. No, nobody else. Right. So this report makes the following recommendations to this committee: that the internal audit assurance plan for 24-25 at Appendix 1 to this report be approved. This includes delegating to the head of audit partnership to keep the plan current for in-year emerging risks as set out in para 2.4 of the report. Are we happy to take these all together? Okay, that the head of audit partnership view that the internal audit currently has sufficient resources to deliver the plan and a robust head of audit opinion be noted, and that the head of audit partnership assurance that the plan is compiled and independently without robust inappropriate influence from management be noted. So one is for recommendation. Are we all happy to recommend that? Agreed? And the other two are noted. Noted? Thank you. Okay. On to item 15 then, statement of accounts for 22-23. Starts at page 187. This does require a decision. This report will be introduced by Mark Green, Director of Finance and Resources and Business Improvement, and Miss Sophia Brown of Grant Thornton. Mark.
Thank you very much, Chair. The committee will have seen the first draft of these accounts back in July 23, and it's taken some time to get to this point. We're not alone in being subject to delays in completing audits. This week it was reported that only 20% of local authorities in England had actually completed and had audited their accounts for the year to 31st of March 23. But we are now happily in the position where Grant Thornton have completed that audit work and are set out in the audit findings report starting on page 284. They will be giving a clean opinion on the accounts, and in a minute I'll ask Sophia to make any comments on the accounts that she wishes to. But I'd also like to thank the finance team at Maidstone, Adrian Lovegrove and Paul Hollander here this evening, and Grant Thornton for getting us to this point of being able to bring completed accounts for the year to 31st March 23 to the committee, and you're asked to approve those accounts and to note the auditor's report, the audit findings report, and the letter of representation that we're required to provide to Grant Thornton. But over to Sophia.
Thank you, Mark. So I am really pleased to say that we have completed our work for the 22-23 financial statements, and also our value for money work, which covers both 21-22 and 22-23. And the value for money work is reported in my auditor's annual report, which is the following report. In relation to the financial statements audit for 22-23, audit materiality remained at the level we set in the audit plan that I presented to you in January. You will also see that we've completed all of our planned work against the significant risks that were identified in the plan. I will draw your attention to the bottom of page 287 of the pack, summarising some of the significant points impacting this year's audit. I think the impact of the overrunning 21-22 audit cannot be understated. There are issues that we identified in the prior year that impact 22-23, and recommendations that we made for 21-22 in November might not have had time to be implemented for the 22-23 financial statements. As Mark mentioned, they were drafted in July, and the 21-22 audit was signed in November. You will see in Appendix D of the report, and you do have a tabled item with an update to that appendix, that there are a number of adjusted and unadjusted misstatements, and also misclassification and disclosure changes. I would also flag that the timing of our audit came at a time when the finance team had a lot of competing pressures and priorities and demands. So when I came to committee in November, I made it really clear that to proceed with the 22-23 audit and planning to complete it within the first 3 months of 2024, it really needed absolute dedication from the finance team. And I just want to say now, I want to thank Mark, Adrian and Paul and the rest of the finance team for committing to and delivering the audit. It really is a big achievement. Further things to highlight, we set out in detail the engagement with the external valuer on page 295 of the pack, and we also flag 3 errors that we identified in the accounting of asset revaluations that are included in Appendix D. And over the page we detail a prior period adjustment that has been made to the financial statements, and that's in relation to Maidstone Museum and the componentised accounting of that asset. On page 300 of the pack, we mentioned some of the issues we had with the plant, property and equipment valuation, the need that we had to obtain a revised IAS 19 report for 22-23 given the extra work that had happened in the prior year. And over the page we detail some of the challenges faced with the journal work that we did and some other areas with the audit. Mark and I have already discussed having an audit debrief after the opinion is signed so that we can further work on improving the audit process for 23-24. As the report states, I intend to issue an unqualified opinion for the financial statements, and it will be issued once the period of public inspection has expired. And before I stop, just a quick note on the 23-24 audit. I'm pleased to say that our planning and risk assessment work is substantially complete. We will be sharing a draft audit plan with management in May, and I will present that audit plan to this committee at the next meeting. So I will stop there for any questions on the audit findings report.
Okay, thank you very much, both of you, and thank you for coming earlier to the briefing that you gave to flesh out a lot of the detail that you've highlighted. Thank you for the members that were able to get there. I'm sure you've had time, obviously, to go through this anyway, but it was certainly very helpful, and very much wish to continue those meetings. So, anybody else have any questions, or did we ask them all earlier? Yes, Councillor Bartlett.
I will just sort of one question. I thought I may have missed it from earlier, but obviously these accounts have been audited later than is ideal. How do you feel that next year's audit will go, and will we be in a better position next year? Because I believe we're in a better position this year than we were last year. They weren't signed off this time last year. So how do you think the audit will go for next year?
I'm hoping and planning that it will go much more smoothly. The issue that we were grappling with the 22-23 audit is the overrunning issues from the prior year that because the audit was signed off so much later, there was no time to rectify any of the issues identified. So that shouldn't be the case for 23-24, and also 23-24 is not a year in which there is much change in relation to the financial statements.
Councillor Cooling, Councillor Harper after that.
Just a question, please. I think I heard in the pre-session that the hard date, the drop dead date for 22-23 is this September, and you have all done brilliantly on this. Will there be a drop dead date for 23-24, and if so, any indications when that will be? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Current indication is that the backstop date for the 23-24 financial year will be the end of May 2025. So current plans are that we will have the 23-24 audit finished by the end of this calendar year, and I'm assuming that the audit committee for that would be in January 25. So we should be very well placed to complete the audit well in advance of the backstop date for 23-24.
Councillor Harper.
Yeah, I think we should make sure that in our minutes we reference the fact that we had about an hour and a half discussion prior to the actual meeting with the officers, because otherwise anybody listening to the broadcast of this will think this is the audit committee and they approve the accounts with virtually no discussion. So I think we need to reference the fact that we had a detailed session with our staff and the auditors prior to this.
Councillor Harper, I think I did do that right at the beginning before I hand over. I said thank you very much for all coming to it. It was quite detailed. We've asked lots of questions.
Sorry, Martin, if I missed that, I apologise.
Okay. I'm sure it'll be minuted, but thank you very much for checking that was going to be done. I do think that the knock-on from 21-22, obviously, it's like dominoes, but I think through the hard work of the finance team and from Sophia and her team from Grant Thornton, we're starting to slow the dominoes as they're carrying on. And I think to achieve what we have done here certainly was a hope that I had, really trying to push the accelerator from a very distance through Mark and his team. But I think we have achieved the best we could have done in this year, and we're getting back to grips with this. I don't think it was any particular point other than COVID and all of the things that knocked on from that. So I certainly think we're on a very good position. We're in the top 20% of the people that can say, councils that can say, we are audited for this corresponding year. Long may that carry on, and long may the detail that we've heard about be settling our residents, knowing that we're in reasonable shape, very good shape, to be able to move on to another municipal year. We have to make recommendations now. Do anybody else wish anything else to say? Okay, so the second item on page 187 should now read, because of the additional paperwork that you had, the amended item, so it should read that the external auditor's revised audit findings report is noted, that the external auditor's letter of representation is noted, and weirdly going back, that the audit narrative statement and statement for accounts for 22-23 are approved. Can I take that all together? I propose. Seconded by Councillor Trubinsky. Okay, I'm happy to add that to that, Councillor Harper. It's obviously, I hope people would pick that up from the minutes, so happy to add that on. Our thanks to Grant Thornton and indeed our own finance team. So, I proposed, Councillor Harper seconded. All those in favour? That's unanimously carried, even from those who can't. Thank you very much, and thank you for all your input and work reading over these and attending the meeting earlier. Thank you very much. Right, item 16 then, the auditor's annual report for 21-22 and 22-23. You can find this on page 334. It is for noting, but the report will be introduced by Mark Green, Director of Finance, Resources and Business Improvement. Over to Mark.
Thank you, Chair. And again, I will introduce this and then invite Sophia to give her comments. Running alongside the audit of the financial accounts, Grant Thornton provide a value for money audit, and they have combined, as they're perfectly entitled to, the value for money audits for 21-22 and 22-23 in their report, which you can find in the appendix to agenda item 16. They've made a number of recommendations which we as a council take on board, and management comments set out how we're responding to those. We do take those recommendations seriously, and we'll be monitoring progress in implementing them. So I'll leave it at that and invite Sophia to say anything she wants to add on the value for money work.
Thank you, Mark. So as Mark said, this is a joint year report. I think it's worth bearing in mind the timing of the report versus the time we are in now. So some of the things that we report on may have already moved on, and where improvement recommendations are raised, the management responses will include what the latest position is. On the papers, page 341, the executive summary shows how our findings for this report compares to the findings from our prior report. The amber ratings show that we have not identified any risks of significant weakness, but we have raised improvement recommendations which, if implemented, should improve the arrangements in place at the council. Over the page, we note for financial sustainability, that area, we have raised 2 improvement recommendations. One in relation to developing savings and income generation plans to address the expected funding gap that will be in existence from 2025-26, and also a recommendation around reporting the full life cost of the current capital programme to ensure future affordability. There are 6 improvement recommendations in the area of governance, one in relation to reviewing the risk management and anti-fraud and corruption policies, one in relation to the performance of Mid-Kent audit and the proportion of audits completed in line with plan. Also, we have an improvement recommendation for the circulation of declaration of interest forms to all council employees every 3 years in line with the Constitution. The consideration of the existing decision-making structure to make sure it's effective and provides value for money. The development of an overarching housing acquisition strategy, and also review of governance arrangements for Maidstone property holding. So in the report that for each of the improvement recommendations raised, there is much more detail along with the management responses. And then picking up the 3 E's, we have 4 improvement recommendations in relation to monitoring performance against the strategic plan in quarterly performance reports, review of governance arrangements for Mid-Kent services to ensure it remains fit for purpose, working together with Tunbridge Wells Borough Council to provide a joint procurement strategy and also provide procurement training to officers involved in procurement, and lastly, the recording and evaluation of contract waivers with information being reported to members. On pages 373 to 375 of the papers, these are the improvement recommendations we raised in the prior report and the updated position. Where relevant, we've made links to related current improvement recommendations that are included in this year's report. And I will stop there for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, that's Sophia. Councillor Harper indicated.
Yeah, I would just again like to the committee to look at page 341, and actually when you go through this report, the fact that overall the auditor's judgment is that there are no significant weaknesses in Maidstone. So I think we should, as a council, be thankful to our officers that they're managing the authority on our behalf, clearly in a very good way. That our auditors, when they go through on a thorough analysis, itemise a few items, areas where there can be improvements, but the fact that they don't see that they've not found any evidence, and there doesn't seem to be any significant weakness in our authority. And I think we're probably in a increasing minority across the country who are probably in the situation we find ourselves, and this is no accident. It's everybody in this committee and the council for years has been committed to making sure that the authority is well run and addresses any issues. And I think tonight this demonstrates that the approach we've all adopted in the council, is a sound one. So I think we should also, when we agree this, pass a vote of thanks to Grant Thornton again and to our staff for actually getting us in a situation where tonight we can adopt the auditor's report with a clear conscience, knowing that we have performed well as a local authority against a backdrop of numbers of councils of all hues across the country which are running into significant difficulties. There's no evidence. Clearly we haven't, and I think if we continue with the way we operate the council, then there's no reason why we should do in the future.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Harper. Anybody else wish to make any comments? Councillor Cooling.
It's working. Following on from what Councillor Harper's just said, I think recommendation 2 on page 351 is particularly pertinent. Page 351, recommendation 2. There is a substantial proposed capital programme. Don't argue with that. And we've got external loans lined up, etc., etc. But to ensure that in a year or so's time, we're not sitting here in a position that a few other councils find themselves in, I would have thought we would like this recommendation to, I'm sure it'll be picked up anyway, but could we please have a bit more analysis of the capital programme, the full life cost, and if it does not look affordable, or if it doesn't look reasonable in financial or maybe social terms, then this committee might have a view. But it strikes me the capital programme ought to be exposed reasonably soon, given its magnitude and huge loan implications for the council. Not criticising it, we just need more reassurance. Thank you.
Mr. Green, is there anything you'd like to comment on?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Cooley. When we come on to the next report, which looks at budget risks, the capital programme is highlighted as being a very significant risk area for the council. It's a major undertaking to deliver a capital programme of this size. So it's absolutely right, as you say, that we should report on the capital programme, that we should monitor the risks and make sure that it is affordable. And we're in a position at the moment where we've lined up borrowing for the first stage of the capital programme. It will get more difficult, particularly if interest rates stay high. So as the management comments here state, we're very careful to make sure that there is a valid business case for all our capital expenditure. So absolutely take on board the points that you make.
Councillor Titchener.
Thank you. Just to follow on from what Councillor Cooling said, I do find it a bit optimistic that it says here on page 382 that the subsidy necessary to deliver affordable housing depends on the council continuing to receive central government support. I would think that's a high-risk strategy, frankly, and I think that's been recognised.
Councillor Titchener, that's the next item.
Okay. Okay, I know it's the next item, but it comes to
Oh, you're making it relevant. Okay.
It comes to capital spending, and as I said before, the capital spending, as I said a few months or a year ago, I think it needs looking at again, seriously. The items that are being proposed. they may have to be out. If it was my bank account, I would slash it.
Thank you. Yes, I'm sure if that the capital programme is put forward before every budget, we know the medium-term financial strategy as well. We're shown that. I believe the documents are in the open. It's publicly, but people can see them. Yes, I mean they're eye-watering figures, but we have an eye-watering problem nationally, and this is what the council is putting its best foot forward to do, and that is that the major capital project, almost faux pas, but that's certainly my view. Anyway, Councillor Harper.
Yeah, I'm a member of the Corporate Services Policy Advisory Committee, and we've had long discussions at our meetings in terms of the revenue budget, also the capital budget, and as part of that, and as part of the discussions, I think when we went up to full council, it's quite clear that the council's approach in terms of the capital programme, yes, it's ambitious, and I think it's probably right to be ambitious, but the clear agreement is that each scheme will be judged on its merits. And one of the things I know John and myself and others are clear on is that when we do that, each scheme needs to be able to demonstrate it can achieve a rate of return sufficient to pay the capital financing costs, so that we don't end up getting into a situation where we proceed with large items of capital expenditure which we can't actually finance because it creates a drain on our revenue budgets, which are already very tight. So I think you can hopefully feel some assurance from the fact that that was one of the underlying principles behind agreeing the capital budget. I know also through attending leaders groups meetings with the chief executive that in terms of the 1,000 affordable homes, there will be quite a bit of briefing done of new members following the elections on some of the economics around that. And because it's not an easy policy, it's set against a challenging environment. However, I think currently the council's fully committed to it, but it does, I think, as Councillor Titchener pointed out, it does rely on an element of government grants to enable us to, say, deliver some of the affordable housing, but also social housing. And we do have a good track record, I think, as a local authority of achieving money from Homes England. Only very recently we got a grant from Homes England to enable 2 of the first 1,000 affordable home projects to actually be delivered as social housing as opposed to affordable housing. So I think as long as we keep on the sort of trajectories and the strategies we've been doing, that we should be able to deliver these policies without a detrimental effect to the rest of the council. I just thought I'd give that bit of information because it does help, I think, with a bit of the context.
Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I totally agree with what Councillor Harper has just said, and I know he's made a very major contribution to the corporate services pack. I just wanted to add that when we look at the capital budget, it's a programme, and when we come to each individual item, we will judge it on that basis. And we always take a prudent approach. Certainly I have, and my predecessors have, and we will hopefully continue to do that. We do not milk our reserves to bolster up our revenue budget. We protect that, and we are very careful in how we manage our finances. And I think that's kept us in a very, very good stead at this council. We don't go in for vanity projects, which some other councils have completely fallen foul of, and we will certainly keep our finances very close so that we don't get ourselves into a position. It's not going to be easy in the next few years, I'm sure of that, but we are on a very sound basis, I think. And I'd like to thank the finance team, particularly and our auditors as well, for the work they've done. So it's very, very important, both internal and external auditors, I should say, as well. So thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Perry. Sorry I haven't come to you after each time we've had the deliberation, but I know you indicate to me we've worked together on this. I think the point Councillor Cooling made is very valid, but we must remember we're dealing with budgets. Budgets can be changed, can be looked at, and as we've heard, things are done on their merits and looking at current factors that would affect them. I'm sure we're in good hands. It looks good at the moment. But who knows what's over the horizon? Who would have foreseen what 2019 brought us? Right. Okay. This item is for noting. I'm just checking that is there an actual. Or can we just note it? If it's noting, I'm going to say, are we all agreed that we can note this report? Thank you very much. Noted. Thank you. Okay. Item 17 then, the budget strategy risk assessment update. From page 382, the report will be introduced by Mark Green, Director of Finance, Resources and Business Improvement. Mark.
Thank you. This is the report that I bring to each meeting, highlighting the budget risks that we face. We've just come to the end of the 23-24 financial year, and we were projecting in the latest quarterly report that we would have a small overspend, and latest indications are that will continue to be the case. We'll either have a balanced position at the end of the year or a small overspend, but that's concealing a big overspend on temporary accommodation offset by a whole range of other factors, and looking forward to 24-25, temporary accommodation costs certainly is one of our biggest budget risks, as highlighted in this report. We have a balanced budget for 24-25, subject to that risk that I mentioned. In subsequent years, again on current projections, we face a budget gap, so there will be a challenge in finding the savings that will close that gap. And as I indicated in the discussion just now, the report also flags up the risks around the capital programme, both as regards financing it and also delivery, given inflation in input prices and all the challenges of delivering capital projects. So, I mean, they're points I've made before, but are worth repeating. In the appendices to this report, as usual, you'll see the detailed budget risk register, and happy to take any questions that members may have on the contents.
Thank you very much, Mark. And everybody, this is not deja vu, sort of. Councillor Harper.
Yeah, picking up what Mark said, the biggest revenue risk I think the authority is going to be facing is going to be around homelessness. I mean, we only have to look at the last 3 or 4 years, or rather since people were allowed to be evicted after the COVID epidemic, to see that over the last couple of financial years we've been massively overspending on homelessness, and we've contained it overall, but it's meant that each year, so the year before the current one and the one we've just gone into, we've had to increase the budgets for accommodating homeless people, and I just think there's no reason to assume, unfortunately, that 2024-25 is probably going to be any different to the last couple of years in that respect. And whilst you could say that comes within item A, which is failure to contain expenditure within agreed budgets in your risk, I just wonder whether we should split out this issue around homelessness as a separate major budgetary risk, because it was, I think from memory, about £1 million in the last year, which was a massive proportion of the council's budget, when yes, there were other sort of items which went up and down, but that thing just jumps out so high as such a major risk to us financially. I just feel whether we should pull it out as a separate one in addition to item A, because it just gets lost within that. Whereas it's just such an important thing. I think it should be an additional risk on its own. And then the mitigation and the key controls may well be the same as we've got elsewhere, but it's the one thing which I think could fundamentally derail the council as we go into the current financial year we've just started, given that we've gone in with literally a balanced budget to almost the penny. So there isn't much, and we don't have much contingency. We do have some, but we've got it's a tight budget. So I don't know whether you feel perhaps, or the officers, that we could actually add that as an additional risk. Thank you.
I'll just hear Councillor Cooling, and then I think Mark can answer both things, or Adrian come in, I'm not sure.
I think that is an excellent idea to break A out into homelessness and everything else. And it mirrors what I was going to say about J, the capital programme, which I would have thought, my perception is, the huge element is to do with 1,000 homes, which I don't disagree with. So why not split J into the homes programme and the rest? Thank you.
Okay, so I think you've got two things to answer there, Mark. They're quite specific and reasonable, I think, but what's your view?
Yeah, thank you. Certainly no problem about splitting out the risks in the way that you've suggested. I would point out, though, that this is a budget risk register, and we also have a corporate risk register that looks at all of the service and other risks that the council faces, and housing is part of that. So this isn't the only way that this is being addressed, but so far as presentation is concerned, I'm quite happy to take on board the proposals that members have made.
You're both okay that is carried out then? So we'll add that
if he's happy,
as a recommendation.
To bring this out, yeah.
Okay, anybody else got any questions? No? In which case, let me not turn the wrong page. So, this report makes the following recommendations to this committee: that the Audit, Governance and Standards Committee notes the risk assessment of the budget strategy provided at Appendix A, and would request that item A be split and also item J be split to reflect the risks of, or to split out the risks of both of those items in our next agenda going forward. Okay, I'm happy to propose that. Seconded by Councillor Trubinski there, just the hair in front of you there. All those in favour? And against? Abstaining? Councillor Jones, did you vote? You didn't. You are for? Excellent. Okay, that was unanimous then. Right, we are about to go into part 2. Would anybody like to have a comfort break at this point, or are you happy to go straight on? Straight on? Yes. Yeah. Any of our officers who do not wish or do need to be here, that means could you exit stage left, and we will be going into part 2. So we've already agreed that we go into part 2. So I've moved it, haven't I? No. Okay, right. So I move that the public be excluded from the meeting for items 18 and 19 due to the likely disclosure of exempt information for the reasons specified, having applied the public interest test. I expect us to be in closed session for maybe half an hour. So if anybody is watching live, you can go away and make a decent cup of coffee or watch the news somewhere. But thank you very much. So are you all okay for us to go into part two? Agreed? Thank you.